of racism and sexism, I guess. Democrats control these major metropolitan areas. And for a number of years, it is no conspiracy theory to tell you, because it is a fact, that George Soros, for his own reasons, and I believe it's to create chaos that we are currently seeing in the streets, George Soros has been funding efforts to elect local DAs along the lines of Glenn Funk, who are soft on crime, who don't believe in a firm hand approach to prosecution of criminals, who use excuses like, oh, we have far too many people incarcerated already. Mass incarceration is a problem in the United States of America. We need to do something about that. By the way, anyone that uses the phrase mass incarceration, I want you to immediately do me this favor, just a Murphy Maxim number 477. Just go ahead and get them to define that. What do you mean by mass incarceration? What do you mean by mass incarceration? There is no such thing as mass incarceration. Every person who is incarcerated in the United States of America is incarcerated because of something they did, because of something they were convicted of, because a jury of their peers, unless they forewent a jury trial, determined that they were in fact guilty of a crime that they were accused of. And they were individually sentenced to an individual punishment. There's no such thing as mass incarceration. That is a liberal trope designed to confuse you. But I digress. DAs around the United States of America for a long time now, funded by George Soros, have gone soft. The documented cases in Los Angeles, for example, we're well on record on those. And St. Louis has another one. I've got her name here somewhere. And Chicago has one, and Philadelphia has one, and Boston has one, and L.A. has one, and on we go. Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Dallas, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia. The world will be a better place when George Soros is dead. But right now, he's got a lot of money and he's still alive. And he understands that if he can sow the seeds of discord and social unrest in the major metropolitan areas, it will create a dynamic by which he will achieve what he wants to achieve. And that is federal control of our metropolitan areas, centralized control of the metropolitan areas, and ultimately a shift from the way that we govern ourselves right now to a more centralized form of socialized government. That's the goal. But you have to have civil unrest in order to achieve that. You have to have a population that is frustrated and confused about what we can do. The answer is more liberty, not less. But George Soros wants less. And so it is a necessary function of the Soros-led effort to see more centralized control and more socialized government and more of a world economy through the WEF. It is necessary that these cities have to burn to the ground. And we're watching them do that. And I wonder if we're going to do anything about it, particularly in the South. What we can do about it. Last night, I watched a piece, and I forget what channel it was on. I'm certain it was not on #NeverCNN or MSNBC. They wouldn't cover this they wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. So I'm assuming that it was either Newsmax or Fox. Democrat-controlled cities have become hellscapes. Hellscapes along the lines of, you ever see RoboCop? Remember the futuristic Detroit in RoboCop? That's what St. Louis looked like to me, watching an individual casually attempt to load a gun, fumble and bumble around it, the other guy just sitting there. Apparently they had some sort of fight or something or another, and just shoot him point-blank range on the street. Dead. DRT, dead right there. And I wonder who in the mainstream media is going to hold these individuals who are responsible for allowing this to happen to account. Who is going to speak for this homeless black man? I guarantee you CNN would be covering it if it was a white dude that shot him. But if it's black on black crime, according to hashtag NeverCNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, and the rest of them, it doesn't count. It sickens me how many black Americans fall prey to this nonsense, where they allow themselves to be sucked in by the Democrat narratives parroted and propagandized by the mainstream media, when in fact they do not care about you. And it's evidenced by their lack of conversation when things like this happen. Their lack of concern regarding how many black people in America are killing other black people. Now, I only break it down by race because I have to, as a way to combat the narrative or the lack thereof in this case. It is amazing to me how willingly Democrats and the media, but I repeat myself, just roll merrily along and pretend that if you're a black American, the likelihood is greater that you get attacked by a white American than by another black American. That's just not true. Now, any attack is one attack too many, but can we not be truthful about it? I hear all the time how we need to have a conversation about race in America. Can we not have a conversation about inner city crime and what the demographics show us? Can we not have a conversation about the DAs and not doing their job, or the police departments in these major metropolitan areas being handcuffed to the point that they're not able to do their job because of a politicalization of the police? Am I the only one upset about this? I don't know, this homeless person from Adam's house cat, but have we gotten to the point where we're not shocked when someone's executed in the streets? For no reason other than, no reason that I could see. So that's on my mind this afternoon. And I want to turn it specifically to the city of Nashville. I don't presume, because I've only been here 15 months, to know what Nashville was like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I've been told quite a bit that the downtown area, particularly Lower Broad, was much different back in the 1980s and even the 1990s. It has changed considerably, and I understand that change has been, for the most part, for the good, but with the good comes a little bit of the bad, which are tourists that are drunk and et cetera, et cetera. Where do you think we are if you go to major metro areas around the South or around the United States of America? And I've been to, a lot of them. I haven't traveled extensively out west. The furthest west that I've been really is Las Vegas. I've been to New Mexico. I've stuck a toe in Arizona. Never been to California in my life. There was a time where I wanted to go. There was a time where I wanted to go to the entire shaky side. That's what we call it, the shaky side, right? The left coast, California, Oregon, Washington State. Not so much. Not anymore. But I've been to Houston. I've been to Dallas. I've been to Charlotte. I've been to Atlanta, obviously, Orlando, all of the Floridas, up and down the eastern seaboard. I don't know that I would go to many of these places if it involved being out, especially at night, in certain areas of town. Chicago's long had a history of violence and crime, and the Chicagoans spoke to that yesterday in a vote. Now, I'm not so sure that they will not get more of the same with either of these two individuals that are set to run off to become the next Chicago's mayor. I do have someone coming on the show, as I mentioned, Scott Stannis, that's got a little additional information on that. We also have Austin. Isn't Austin from Missouri? He's out in Missouri, right? Is he in St. Louis? Kansas City or Jefferson City? One way or the other, Austin Petersen will be with us. He is an author, a talk show host in his own right, and a political activist. He ran for U.S. Senate against Josh Hawley in the Republican primary and lost to Hawley. We'll find out how he believes that Hawley is doing. And let me see. He is, where does he live? He's born in Independence. Doesn't say where he lives now. One way or the other, Austin will be able to tell us. That's at 1 o'clock today. Cameron Smith in his normal spot at 2 p.m. But I want to ask you, if you've lived in Nashville for some length of time, is crime getting worse in the city? I don't know the answer to this question. I don't presume to know, but I know that you do. Is crime getting worse? And if so, what are we prepared to do about it? 1220 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN 615-737-9986. All right, friends, it seems a little early to plan. Well, it's not early. It's never too early to plan the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, and I want you to get your tickets now. These tickets are sure to sell out, so it's important that you get them early. The dates, August 4th through the 6th in downtown Nashville. Tickets are on sale right now, and I want you to get amped up. All right, so here's the deal. It's not just racing. There's a lot of racing going on, but it's also, food and racing and beer and racing and music and racing and more racing and racing. New for 2023, they've got the Saturday night racing, the return of the high-flying stadium trucks, tons and tons of racing capped off with Sunday's NTT IndyCar Series driving through the streets of Nashville. As I said yesterday, the only race in the NTT IndyCar Series where they go over water when they go over the bridge in downtown Nashville. So I want you to get tickets right now. It is an event that is sure to thrill you and anyone else that goes with you. The Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, August 4th through the 6th. It's the party of the year, and it's excitement that you can feel. Get amped up. Snag your tickets today. Here's the website, MusicCityGP.com, MusicCityGP.com.
One of the big words being thrown around in the investing world right now is this one. You may have heard it. Fiduciary. The idea that the investment advisor has to keep your interest first when they give advice. Now, it's being used in a marketing sense right now, and one of the things that I found fascinating, there was a study by the University of Southern California and Indiana University. They looked at investment advisor portfolios and they found that they were making basic academic mistakes in the management of their own portfolios. And the question that they asked was, if they can't even keep their own best interest first, how are they going to keep your best interest first? That was the question. Now, one of the things that we do at Paul Winkler Inc. is every one of our offices, 10 offices, is run by a degreed planner, number one. But we go way beyond the call of duty when it comes to fiduciary and making sure that we're using academically sound principles in investing. Evidence-based. In other words, a lot of this is backed by Nobel Prize winning research. To learn more about our approach to investing in financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and a good afternoon to you. How you doing? Glad to see you on the Super Talk TV there. Go on over to the YouTubes, the Facebook Lives, the Twitter, and the Twitches. You know, I'm wondering if I'm not being, am I being shadow banned on the Facebook? Are you on the Facebook, Kay? No, I didn't think so. You're enjoying yourself back on Twitter, though. I like seeing that. That's nice. You've only been banned the once since you've been back? Twice? Since you've been back? You gotta, come on, man. I'm a little jealous. I've never been, am I a softie on Twitter? Is that what you're telling me? I feel like I'm pretty rough, but yeah, hit or miss. So if you make yourself available to the YouTube TV or the Facebook Live or the Twitter or the Twitch, you can see the goings on in the Palatial Studios. You can see that we've not made a lot of progress. I do have a coat. Can you see my coat on the camera shot? I do have a coat up. We do have the some signage in the background there. We will have something else back here. I am told that some sort of designer is going to come in and reset this studio to make it look nice for the cameras. I'm told that. I will believe it. Well, I believe it. I believe it's going to take some time before it happens, but I believe it. So I mentioned that to say tomorrow, if you watch on YouTube TV or Facebook or Twitter or Twitch, we have a remote. And I'm stalling just a little bit because I want to find the address. It is in Cool Springs. And by remote, I know that's a little bit of an inside parlance. We will be broadcasting on location at California Closets. So we invite you to be a part of it. You're welcome to come out and say hello to us. Let's see. We will be on the in the Cool Springs location at the Cool Springs showroom of California Closets. And when I say we, I will be out there. Obviously, our promotions team will be there as well. And Nashville's Morning News, Dan Mandis, you can come. And it's my understanding, and Mandis, if I'm wrong, you correct me right now on the super text line or on my phone. My understanding that Dan will allow the first 50 people that show up and say that they heard this on the Matt Murphy show, he'll allow them to touch his new mustache. You can touch of it. And even maybe we'll have a little brush there and you can brush of it. So Dan Mandis, Matt Murphy, California Closets. It's at 420 Cool Springs Boulevard. It is tomorrow. We'll be there starting at about 11 o'clock, and I'll crank up the show about 12 o'clock, and we'll show you all the cool things going on at California Closets. Once again, that's 420 Cool Springs Boulevard tomorrow, starting at about 11 o'clock. That's good stuff. Jonathan is next. I asked a question. I'm getting answers. So y'all tell me. I've been here, March? But I've been here now 16 months. I started in December of 2021. So I feel like I've gotten a good, full-throated Nashville experience, but I don't presume to know what was going on in Nashville a year before I got here or 2 years before I got here. And so the question becomes, is crime worse now than it was 5 years ago? And if so, what do we do about it? Jonathan has an answer or perhaps a thought on this. Hey, Jonathan, how are you?
What's up, man? Doing pretty good. Real good. Yeah, my thought on the crime in Nashville, absolutely, it's gone up. I've been here since 2014, and it gets worse, it seems, exponentially, at least the last few years especially. They've gotten softer on the crime in the outlying areas, breaking in cars, breaking in houses, but stealing stuff, just walking out of stores. And, there's a lot of people that just get extremely lucky. They're not getting caught breaking in these cars. Otherwise, they may not be able to do anything ever again. But that's not – one of the things I mainly called in for is I wanted to kind of disagree with you about there's a leftist narrative about systemic racism and mass incarceration. However, there is – a section of or a sect of our government that profits from having people in the prison system, in the jail system. And you can see that just by the stocks in the prison system, the privately owned, the CCAs and stuff like that. Their stocks continue to grow. It's some of the most lucrative and profitable stocks you can buy. And the more people they have in, well, obviously, the more places they need to build. The more places they build, the more profit they have, and they have to have people in and incarcerated in order to profit from that.
You're talking about these private-public partnerships where governments engage in a partnership with a private entity to build a prison and control and manage the prison?
Yes, absolutely. But you got to understand, without the prisoners, there's nothing to do there. They're privately owned, privately funded, but they have subsidies from the government.
Okay, so Jonathan, let's work through this together, because let me assume, for the sake of argument, that everything that you just said is absolutely true. Okay?
Okay.
They're not making up the crimes.
No, that's true. But let me interject there. I was a hoodlum years past. I'm early 40s now. My teens, early 20s, I was an absolute hoodlum. Okay? Don't do anything like that anymore. I've learned, grown.
Hey, Jonathan, can I pause for a second? I want to call you a ne'er-do-well. Can I call you a ne'er-do-well?
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what a ne'er-do-well? You don't know what a ne'er-do-well is? It's like a hoodlum, like a street punk, a ne'er-do-well. But hey guys, are you going to do well? When are you going to do it?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'm joking.
My point was, the majority of the time that I got in trouble with the law, yes, it was my fault. But there were a few instances, and I swear to
Jonathan,
God,
what did you do?
I was arrested and put.
What did you do?
Fights, get caught with pot, pills, or something like that. Just being out, public intox, stuff like that. One time I got charged with public intox. I had a brand new six-pack with one beer missing. The officer pulled me out. I was walking. The officer stopped me, questions me. I'm underage. He slapped on 8 charges when I had one beer missing out of the six-pack. Well, I was under 21. I had one beer missing out of the six-pack. He gave me public intox and just all kinds of stuff.
Jonathan, I have to cut it a little bit.
I had to plea out in order to get out of the majority of the trouble, which I still got in trouble.
Hold on. How many times have you been arrested?
5, 8.
Well, is it 5 or 8, Jonathan? I mean, don't you remember?
Again, I told you, smoking a lot, pills a lot. No, I don't remember.
Well, I can understand why you might have a negative impression on the incarceration system in the state of Tennessee if you've been arrested 8 times or 5 times. No one's making you do the illegal activity, though. Even if I grant you the first half of your conversation, it's illegal. You were underage and you were drinking, so. There you go. It's 12:33, Super Talk 99.7, WTN. All right, folks, I'm going to lean on you a little bit because it's March 1st and it's past February. I feel a little weird demanding that you call Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling and schedule a tune-up appointment today when it's February for your AC because, it's still, hey, Murph, it's still wintertime. Well, technically it's still wintertime. It's still wintertime until March 21st, I think. That's the spring equinox. One way or the other, go ahead and make that scheduled appointment today, okay? But here's the reason. You're going to get more life out of the unit that's in your house if you maintenance that unit every year. It's just a fact. Over and over and over again in various aspects of our lives, we recognize that. But sadly, a lot of people just put off the maintenance plan on their AC. Go ahead and allow Jeff to put you on the calendar, get out there, go over it with a fine-tooth comb. He's got like a 187-point inspection. I'm making that up, but it's a lot. And he'll let you know if anything's wrong. You can trust the man is not going to try to sell you on something that you don't need, but he can identify things that are going to decrease the life of your unit. If it's time to go, They're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric, an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. Happy to help you in that regard. And you'll never pay more than $125 for any maintenance visit to a residence with Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. Oftentimes, if you have one unit or even two, you'll pay less. You'll never pay more, no matter how many units you have. It's Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. Call him today at 615-784-4424, 784-4424, or efficienthvac.net. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN, 1238. Matt Murphy and you until 3, The Drive with Brian Wilson. At that time, you can catch us on a variety of apps and applications and platforms, et cetera, obviously, primarily on the 100,000-watt blowtorch that is Super Talk 99.7 WTN on the radio dial. You can also find us on our app. You can download that to your smartphone and take it anywhere. You can also find us on streaming. That's 997WTN.com. And now on Super Talk WTN TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. We're still building out the studio. Bear with us as construction is in progress, but we'll get there. But you can find us. For you masochists in the listening audience that want to know what people on radio look like, well, it's exactly what you think. There's a reason we're not on television. I look much better in caricature or cartoon form. This guy knows because he's drawn me. Scott Stannis joins us. He is an old friend. I owe you so many apologies for not calling, not writing, not communicating more so after leaving and being so busy in Nashville. Scott, I love you. How are you? Good afternoon.
I'm well. I am doing great. Well, yeah, you know, but obviously the cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune here, and we had an interesting night last night.
Well, yeah, so I was going to, I failed in my introduction that Stannis has drawn for a lot of papers around the country over the years. I met him when he was drawing for the Birmingham News. He was the editorial cartoonist there. He moved up to Chicago, and you were in Chicago as the editorial cartoonist for what, 7 years? Is that
10 years on staff, but I'm still drawing for him. So
oh, cool.
But yeah, in fact, I'm drawing on this very issue.
Yeah, I can imagine that you are. Well, I want to talk to you about a number of things. I want to talk to you about, obviously, the mayor's race last night. I want to talk to you about inner city violence, broadly and more generally. And obviously, you're always going to have violence, more violence in a major city like Chicago. But it feels like it's getting worse, Stannis. And I don't want to be, two old guys sitting on the front. In our day, we didn't have all of this muckety-muck violence.
Get off my lawn!
Right? But doesn't it feel like it's getting more prevalent?
Oh, no, there's no question. There's absolutely no question about it. In Chicago particularly, since COVID, the Mag Mile, the Magnificent Mile, the Michigan Avenue, where all the shops are, they're about 70% vacant right now. Smash and grab, the people who own these stores have been told to not interfere with the people who are doing the smashing and the grabbing. The police force, here's an interesting stat. Almost 2,000 last year, Matt, almost 2,000 Chicago police officers retired, and you can retire up to 20 years. The academy put out 9. Now, I'm no mathematician, but 9 seems a hell of a lot less than 2,000. And so there's a shortage of police officers in the area. They usually have the policy of containment. There's always these, bad wards where bad things happen, and as long as you could keep the bad people there, then, the rest of the city could go on amongst its business. Well, that badness has just leaked out all across the city. So places like the Loop, which is down to the downtown area, it's all gotten, pretty bad. So, no, you're not just imagining it. We're not just a couple crotchety old guys on the porch saying, well, in my day, kids stayed off our lawns.
Well, no, and I think some of it is by design. I think that there are individuals behind the scenes that are putting a lot of money into political races locally. I mean, I think the George Soros thing is real. For a while, I poo-pooed it a little bit, Scott, but now this is years ago. But if you look at the math, I mean, Soros funds a lot of these district attorney races in which he puts into place individuals that go soft on the biggest crime breakers, therefore putting them back on the streets to engage in recidivism. I mean, it's not a hard, and if Matt Murphy can figure it out, it's not hard to figure out that if you put the bad guys back on the streets sooner, they're going to commit crimes again. And Chicago is a great example of how people will put up with a lot, but they finally, and I think crime was a big factor in this, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but they finally have had a belly full of it, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I can. There's a myriad of stories I can tell you. One that's very telling. A friend of mine was very involved in a place called the Union League Club, which is a club that's downtown Chicago. Big leather chairs, wood walls, all that stuff, and it's been around for 150 years or whatever. He was extremely involved in this. You could tell he loved the club. He loved the place. He stopped going to the club. He literally resigned. One of the reasons was because he's kind of an older Irish guy, so very, very white, drives a nice car, and he was just afraid that driving downtown, he just knew the carjackings had become so flagrant and so frequent that he, stopped driving downtown. He said, I'm not going to risk it. That's what Chicago is dealing with. And going to the Soros thing, you're absolutely correct. Kim Fox is the state's attorney for the county, the prosecutor. I'm doing air quotes here, always effective on the radio. But the state's attorney, and she's the one who, Jussie Smollett, she's the one who refused to, she got a call from Barack Obama's wife to ask her to not prosecute this. She didn't. That's what you're dealing with in Chicago. Can I go on? Can I tell another quick story?
No, absolutely. No, this is fascinating.
And so people wonder why is Chicago, why are the criminals taking over there? And here's a simple reason. The other element of this, Matt, is that Chicago law is set up, and the judiciary is set up that they have county and they're appointed judges. Many of the judges, how can I put this kindly? They drew the pirate on the back of the matchbook, and they got their law degree. I mean, not the smartest or the greatest legal minds in the country. So they are put in a place, and they rule politically versus just by the law. There was, and this gets very dark very quickly, and I'm sorry for that, but it's an important story to tell. There was a kid, 9-year-old boy, newsflash across, about 3 or 4 years ago, was shot execution style on the south side of Chicago. 9 years old. He was wooed into an alley. and shot execution style. They caught the guy who did it. Matt, the guy had been picked up 5 times prior to committing this horrific crime and had not served a single night in prison.
It's just disgusting.
Yes, it is disgusting.
So what do we do? Most of us in Nashville, most, I believe, in Birmingham, where you are now, would say, well, Chicago's maybe too far gone outside of an occasional visit. That's their problem. My question to my listening audience and my question to you, Scott, is what can we do to effectively prevent that type of or level of violence coming to Birmingham, Alabama, or to Nashville, Tennessee?
Well, you hold your elected officials accountable, first and foremost. You tell them you can't appoint, numbskull judges to protect you, which is what they're in a position to do. Number 2, they have to enforce the laws. We may find that uncomfortable. It does put a strain on the legal system, obviously on the penal system. And so, you have to insist on that. I mean, this isn't complicated. I mean, it's so simple. Even a cartoonist can understand it.
So I had someone on our handy dandy super text feature where people can text in questions and comments without having to wait on hold, ask specifically about you as editorial cartoonist in the Chicago Tribune and how you treated Lori Lightfoot during her time as mayor. Wanted to know, did Scott draw Lori Lightfoot as Beetlejuice?
Pretty darn close. Yeah, she's got Rahm Emanuel eyes, so I already had that down from 2 terms of him, and she has a very odd hairline, so that's the other thing. And she's tiny. She wears these huge talking heads, kind of like an oversized suit. It's an odd look, but it's great to draw. Full disclosure here, Matt, I was on the editorial board at the time of the Chicago Tribune. We voted unanimously to endorse her during the runoff 4 years ago. She projected the kinds of values that we liked, and boy, what a disappointment! The wheels just came off.
Well, I was going to say you and we're about to face this in Nashville, right? Because Nashville's mayor, John Cooper, announced that he was not running again. So anytime you have that open race, you see a lot of comers and goers in terms of the future direction of a city of this size. And, we recognize that we're not getting a conservative Republican in that position, right? And in Chicago, it's the same deal. No matter how conservative, and I know, and for those who don't, Scott Stannis is a very conservative guy, and I know that you would much rather have a conservative Republican in that position, but you're also a realist. That's not happening. So you have to kind of pick from the best of, Democrats or more liberal-minded people or more moderate individuals, and you felt like Lori Lightfoot presented herself in that way 4 years ago, yes?
And she was also coming in against the ensconced political machine there. Her opponent was a woman by the name of Toni Preckwinkle, and Toni Preckwinkle is the president of the county commission, Cook County, where the Chicago resides, and was had just passed a heinous tax. Don't forget, here's the other issue that people aren't talking about, Matt, and it really frosts my shorts because it's an important one, but of course we can't talk about it because, this can't possibly be the reason. Property taxes inside of Cook County are among the highest in the country. Think about this for a moment. Now, couple that with what happened during COVID and the housing costs. You're some guy on the south side of Chicago. You took us off to get the American dream. You own a small home. All of a sudden, the home that may have been valued 2 years ago at $180,000 is now $450,000. There is no forgiveness in the tax code there. So your taxes just doubled, and many people's went up 2, 3, 4 times over the last 2 or 3 years. Paul Vallis is one of the guys in the runoff. He's presenting himself as a law and order fiscal conservative, still part of the Democratic Party because it's a one-party county. Let's be clear, as you just mentioned. But he is. I really do believe that. I think a conservative could win the governorship in California. The culture war stuff, I don't think is as much of a winner as the fiscal stuff and saying we're going to take care of it in a serious way. We're going to take care of the border. We're going to take care of, I'm talking about California. We're going to talk about serious way about homelessness, and we're going to cut taxes because, it's running people out of their homes. It's crazy. So in Chicago, long answer, short question. This is
so who's the better? So Vallis is the better of the two options left remaining.
Yeah, well, but they're all in the pocket. Yes, Johnson is. Do a little research. Do like 3 minutes of research, and your skin will start to crawl. Mm-hmm. He's a nice man. He's a good guy, but Holy Mary, Mother of God, this guy is bought, paid for, and up on the shelf of the teachers union, which is an extremely powerful union, and the government workers unions. All of them own this guy.
Hey, I'm sorry to have to go rapid fire with you, but I want to ask you a couple of additional questions because we haven't talked in so long, and we need to do this more often. Did you ever meet Scott Adams?
I did not. I saw. You talk about putting TNT, a truckload of manure and lighting a fuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a way to respond to that poll that didn't get in the way of the serious nature of the poll, right? I mean, if we are to believe the poll, and for those who don't know, Scott Adams was the creator of the cartoon strip Dilbert, and I think that all cartoonists know one another. I mean, I assumed you guys roomed together at some point, Stannis. I don't know, but so he comes
we
out.
Do know each other.
And he comes out and he's reflecting on a very serious poll that indicated that a majority of black respondents said that it's not okay to be white. But he did so in a way that can be only described as racist itself. And I was just curious if you saw that and if you had ever met him.
I had not. He's a very reclusive guy. He never participated in a lot of those cartoonist associations, and we have, meetings once a year and kind of hang out and drink and party and have fun together. But he never joined in on that. I don't know anyone who knows him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we can talk about that at a later time. But real quick, before I say goodbye, so I know, and for those who don't, Stannis has never been really keen on Trump that much. He appreciated some of the policies initiated by Donald Trump during his presidency, but the personality, et cetera, et cetera. We can talk about that later. But I am curious how you think DeSantis is doing so far in terms of what appears to be a setup for an announcement.
Oh, he's going to run, but I've said this numerous times, and I will say it again. Anyone who thinks that the nominee is going to be anyone besides Donald Trump in 2024 is nuts. The man is running. He's announced he's running. Unless he has a health issue, there is some that could trip him up. Past that, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee for the year 2024.
Well, there you go. And that's coming from a guy that, you've always been, I think it's fair to say, very iffy, trepidatious regarding supporting someone.
That's putting it nice.
That's putting it nice. Well, hey, look, let's do this again, Stannis. The time has flown by. I appreciate you coming on.
I'd love to. Thanks,
all right,
Matt.
there's Scott Stannis, former current editorial cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune, and all-around good guy, knows Chicago very well. Thoughts on Lori Lightfoot going down in defeat last night. It's 12:53 on Super Talk. I was at LT360 at their Cool Springs location this morning, but here's the great news, right? So you're invited to come in every few weeks or month to sit down and meet with your coach and talk about your success when you're on the LT360 program, right? And this is not a weight loss program. It is a life transformational, really, I mean, it's just a different way of looking at incomes versus outcomes, and it's a different way of looking at your health. It's a holistic health plan that's going to benefit you in so many ways, and one of those ways, you will lose the weight. So I'm talking to Coach Elizabeth this morning, and she tells me about the advancements that they've made in virtual get-togethers, meaning that you don't have to drive every 3 weeks or every month to see Coach Elizabeth in person. You can do so via Zoom or Skype or some other virtual platform, even FaceTime, and you do so in a way that's going to benefit you and save on the pocketbook when it comes to gas prices, getting to and from, and your time, obviously, getting to and from Cool Springs. So ask them about it when you make the call, or go over to the website and find out more about LT360. It will truly change your life on a cellular level, on a holistic health level. I encourage you to call Coach Scott, Dr. Underwood, Coach Elizabeth, or any of the rest of the team at LT360. right, here we are. Here we go. Hour number 2 of the Matt Murphy Radio Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN 104. A pleasant and a good afternoon. It is a gorgeous day today. Man, oh man. Turned out pretty good, huh? Okay, it's a little overcast. Just a little overcast, but not bad. Nasty weather coming in tonight. Just keep it right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll keep you abreast of everything that you might expect. It's an overnight situation, so batten down the hatches before you go to bed. Should be just fine. It's my understanding it's severe weather. It's pockets of severe weather, but it's nothing that will be rampant or widespread, and hopefully everybody will be A-okay in the aftermath. So some rain coming in tonight into tomorrow. 615-737-9986 if you want to jump on the phone lines or the super text lines. You're invited to do that. Coming up later on this hour, another train derailment, this time in Florida. 30,000 gallons of propane potentially exposed to the elements might leak at some point. We're covering that story for you. Democrat-controlled cities, as we talked about the first hour, and I was asking what to do about this in Nashville. Nashville, or at least Davidson County, I mean, obviously the metro area is bright red in Goodlettsville and Hendersonville and Franklin and Brentwood. But in Davidson County, we're dealing with blue politicians, bright blue politicians. And when you have Democrat-controlled areas, you have rampant crime, and it seems to have ratcheted up in the last 5 or 6 years. I do not believe it is COVID-related. I believe it's DA-related, prosecution-related. I understand that. Democrat-controlled cities have become hellscapes. They're not becoming hellscapes. They are hellscapes. They remind me of like post-apocalyptic Detroit out of RoboCop. And the question then is, what are we going to do about it? Well, the citizens of Chicago pushed back in a meager way last night as they dismissed Lori Lightfoot, selecting the lesser of two evils, one would imagine. And then there's this story out of St. Louis, Missouri, where an individual by the name we now know of Deshaun Thomas calmly, and this video broke yesterday, and it is absolutely horrific to watch, especially if you know what's coming. Individual inside of a building filming this video where two individuals, one sitting on a street corner. This person has been described as a homeless individual. The other person, apparently they had some sort of verbal altercation before the video was shot. He is calmly loading a gun, fumbles around with it for a hot minute, and when he gets it loaded, he points the gun at the other person and shoots and kills him. Executes a person in broad daylight. Joe Biden's America. To speak on this and so much more, it is our pleasure to welcome Austin Petersen to the program. Austin is not only a talk show host in his own right, he is an advocate, an activist, he is an author, and he is a former political candidate. He ran against Josh Hawley in the Republican primary there in Missouri, and he joins us on the Matt Murphy Show this afternoon. Austin, it's a pleasure to meet you. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Sorry it's on such a dark topic. I saw that video yesterday, and it's one of those reasons why conservatives and libertarians don't like to claim St. Louis here in Missouri, but unfortunately this is a problem that we have to deal with. Thankfully, our governor and attorney general have stood up and are demanding the resignation of the prosecutor of St. Louis, who has been derelict in her duty to prosecute crimes. I think the statistics came out, and it was, if you murder someone in St. Louis, you have a 1 in 4 chance of being prosecuted. Can you imagine? 1 in 4 chance of committing a violent crime. It's got to stop. And again, thankfully, living in a Republican state as we do, I think something is going to be done about it. But these Soros-funded prosecutors across the country are like you said, these cities are not turning into hellscapes. They are hellscapes. I just got back from Baltimore, Maryland last week. That city is terrifying. You don't want to walk down the street in the middle of daytime in Baltimore, let alone at night. I don't know what could be done about these cities, but I mean, at some point you got to ask yourself, these people, why are they voting for the same people over and over again? You made a good point. Small potatoes there got rid of Lori Lightfoot, but there's got to be massive reform done in these cities. And yeah, it is one party rule in these cities. That is the problem. It is Joe Biden's America, exactly as you laid it out.
George Soros seems to be using, Austin, our basic political philosophies against us. I don't want to presume yours, but if we are anything alike in our libertarian roots, I believe that government serves best that serves most locally. Well, unfortunately, the local elected officials allow, or at least as far as they can, allow these local elected DAs to not do their jobs. And it makes me wonder, and I've cast it out to the listening audience, what, if anything, we can do about the metropolitan areas that are so important to the vitality of our communities. I mean, obviously, I understand that Nashville is important to the greater Middle Tennessee area, but what can we do about it outside of taking over control?
Well, Nashville is certainly way better off than St. Louis is for sure. But I mean, I know you still have your problems down there, and Tennessee is kind of a jewel in the crown here in the United States. Missouri certainly has a lot of problems that could be solved by having our legislature stand up. So I mean, I think when you say using our ideals against us, remember we still have power. We still have these Republican-controlled legislatures. One of the problems that we have with Republican states, red states like ours, is that you'll frequently have a Republican supermajority, but you don't have a conservative supermajority, right? There's a difference between what people believe and what is the letter after their name. Democrats run as Republicans in Missouri because they know that they can't get elected otherwise. So there is peril in having a supermajority in these states. But allowing the cities to have a modicum of control over themselves, sure. But there can't be rampant lawlessness, right? St. Louis, the city of St. Louis can't ban guns on the streets of St. Louis from law-abiding citizens because not only is that stopped at the state level, but now that's stopped at the federal level. So, I mean, there has to be a checks and balances here. But the question is are those Republican supermajorities conservative majorities? Can we get more actual conservatives elected rather than just somebody with an R after their name? I think too many people are sort of hornswoggled by party politics, and that they think that because somebody has an R after their name, that means they agree with you, or that we're all pulling in the same direction. And that's kind of the problem with this kind of team-based tribal politics that we have, is that people are not very good at seeing the enemy. So, for example, a lot of times people who are in the Republican Party see libertarians as the enemy. They see libertarian Republicans like myself who are trying to limit government, who are trying to get rid of people like Tim Gardner or others. These, constitutionalists, limited government types. They see people like yourself and myself as the enemy. Now, some of those are rhinos and neocons and people who are ideologically devoted to destroying limited government republicanism like you and I represent. But some of these are just well-meaning people who are just hornswoggled by the party machines and sort of don't understand the philosophy. And all of this really goes back to education. I mean, do you really think that if that man who had executed that person on the streets of St. Louis had been able to get a good education in life and gotten a good start in life, that he would have ended up where he was at right now? No, it's because our education system has been captured. The source of all of this is the ignorance, the base ignorance of philosophy and of politics that has corrupted our entire system. You can trace absolutely all of our problems back to our public education system. I guarantee it.
Now, you touch on something so important, Austin, and it's the tug and pull of big tent politics, right? I understand that you need to welcome all that want exposure to Republican Party politics or libertarian philosophy. You want to expose them to said same, but at the same time, you don't want to push people away simply because they disagree with you 3 or 4 or 5 out of 100 times. But you run the risk of acquiescing to the Mitch McConnells of the world when it comes to Washington, D.C. style politics. And I want to parlay that into a direct question. I know you ran against Josh Hawley in his effort to become senator of Missouri. How do you feel like he's done?
Boy, that's a tough question for me, right? Whenever you run against someone in a primary, you're always going to have a kind of a special angst. I do try and be objective, and I'll say that I cheer for him, quite a bit, right? But I think, when it comes to how he's trying to hold Fauci accountable, terrific, right? When I see him taking on the left in the culture wars, I think Josh Hawley and I are absolutely on the same side there. What really just sticks in my craw is that, and I know people don't care about this anymore, but damn it, I'm still a fiscal conservative, and the guy voted to spend more money than Bernie Sanders last year. But, we sweep that under the rug because we're more interested in fighting the war of, Walt Disney World in Florida and getting behind Ron DeSantis on that fight. And, conservatives are still, fighting yesterday's battle of hoping to regulate big tech, even though Meta is failing, and even though, a capitalist billionaire in Elon Musk purchased Twitter and exposed the government's evil wrongdoing in that arena. So, in that sense, you can say liberty is winning, but by accident or by default, not because of, by actual, methods taken by government officials. So, if Republicans did what they were good at, if Josh Hawley, stayed in his lane when it came to going after the woke ideologies and the critical race theory, if he stayed in his lane on those things and voted fiscally conservative, God, he'd have. I could say nothing but nice things about him all day long. But I come from the Rand Paul wing of the Republican Party. I want a Republican who is not only taking Anthony Fauci to task, but I want somebody who's willing to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be funding cocaine quails having sex and breeding habits, right? Maybe we shouldn't be giving methamphetamine to shrimp and putting them on a treadmill with our tax dollars, right? I want a fiscal conservative as well as somebody who fights for conservative values in other arenas. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't. It's so frustrating, and you're talking my language. I like to say that today's Republicans are yesterday's Democrats, and today's Democrats are yesterday's socialists. And the only political philosophy that seems to be concerned about fiscal responsibility anymore is libertarian philosophy, which is why I describe myself as a libertarian with a small L, right? Because no one in Washington, D.C., and I say no one, I understand they're in the minority. I scream and yell at my good friend Gary Palmer from down in Alabama all the time about what they're not doing in D.C., even when they take over and they have control of both bodies of the Congress. And he says what you've said to me today, Austin. He said, Matt, you're of the misguided opinion that there are as many conservatives in D.C. as there are Republicans. And let me tell you, it ain't the case, right? So I get so frustrated yelling about people spending fake money. I mean, and even if it's for a good cause, it's still made up money. And folks get angry at me for calling it that. But what else do you call it when we're just making up a bankroll to send to Ukraine? Does that mean that I don't support the ultimate cause of the Ukrainian people being free to decide their own determined fate? Sure. But it also doesn't mean that I believe we should be spending $113 billion dollars of money that we don't have.
Well, it's social engineering, right? So at the end of the day, Republicans want to socially engineer you this way, and Democrats want to socially engineer you that way, and people like you and I don't want to socially engineer anybody. So back to that question of our educational system. If you ask the common person, even the most politically aware person, to define what progressivism means, do you think that most people could do it? Right? Do you think you could do it? I mean, most people have no friggin' clue what that means. They'll tell you it's this, or it's some lefty, it's some purple-haired lefty, or it's CRT, or it's all this kind of stuff. Progressivism means that you want to use the government to change people's lives. You want to transform the lives of the citizens by using the government. Now, you could look at the communist example of making the new Soviet man. You could look at the Chinese example, Mao's example of trying to get rid of the old ways and make the government make everything new. Like let's start all over again, right? But there is a progressive strain of republicanism that is antithetical to our traditional American values, and that is we have a government that is supposed to have cops, courts, nukes, and then all of the social issues are supposed to be fought out by us in society. Marvel makes a terrible communist, superhero movie. Conservatives get to make an awesome cowboy conservative, Western, right? And those values compete in the arena, not one funded by the government or another. But what we have is progressivism that, the left, you could write off. Progressivism, is mostly the domain of the left. But there is an increasing strain of progressive republicanism. If you're being charitable, they like to hang out. They call themselves the Teddy Roosevelt Republicans, but they agree with the left. I like to say it's the progressive Republicans of today they're basically Elizabeth Warren, but at least they go to church on Sunday, right? But they still want to socially engineer our lives. There's a reason why Tucker Carlson endorsed Elizabeth Warren's economic plan, right? There's a reason why this whole push for a regulatory agenda towards big tech, is so popular amongst Republicans, well, it's because they're progressives, right? And I'm not a progressive. I don't want to socially engineer people's lives. I don't want the government to do that. I want us to have these fights in our communities with our families, our friends, our neighbors, our churches, right? We've got cops to protect us from people murdering each other in the streets. We've got courts to settle disputes. And we've got some soldiers who can kick ass and take names and break stuff if we need to defend our lives, our liberty, and our property. Everything else ought to be the domain of the private sphere, private property. But unfortunately, progressivism is the rule of the day for both parties.
Oh, it's so well said. Austin Petersen, our guest, he's coming to us from Missouri. He's a former Senate candidate. He's a great author. He's a great activist, and he's a fine talk show host in his own right. So he will understand that I've got to take a quick time out. I have two main topics when we come back. One is his book about my favorite president, Calvin Coolidge. Two, the FBI and whether we need to dismantle it, plus what I call the BIC, the bureaucrat industrial complex. That's next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Ah, yeah. 124 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Drive coming up at 3 o'clock this afternoon. It's information-fueled and opinion-driven news talk radio for the masses on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Also, Super Talk TV. I have no idea why you would want to watch me do what I do. I'm not pretty. But if you do, so be it. Masochists all come on to Super Talk TV on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. All the evil platforms. Austin Petersen joins us via the Murphy Show hotline. He is a talk show host. Where are you found, Austin, on the proverbial quote unquote radio dial, so folks can look you up if they want to get more Petersen in their life?
Yeah, best place to go if you want to find me is wakeupamerica.show.com. That's the name of the show, and it'll take you to wherever you can listen to me or tune in. So wakeupamerica.show.com. Visit that website, and that'll give you all the information as well as all my socials of where you can find me and follow me online.
I have a feeling, and we just met, but I have a feeling that you and I could spend an hour discussing how we need to dismantle the Federal Bureau of Investigation and a lot of the other alphabet soup organizations that I believe constitute what I call the BIC. It used to be the military-industrial complex. I now believe it's the bureaucratic-industrial complex that think they run the show, and in some cases, I fear they are right. But I want to go this direction first. Here's my favorite. This quote is in my home office. I have a large, 24 by, 30 poster-size frame print of this quote. Nothing in the world can take place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Who said that quote, Austin, if you had to guess?
Calvin Coolidge.
Calvin Coolidge. My favorite president, Silent Calvin. You've written a book about him.
I have, actually. My wife and I are very excited to announce our book over at Amazon.com. It's called Calvin, the Coolest President. We found out that there just really aren't a lot of children's books that introduce this amazing president, the most conservative president in American history. I mean, bar none in terms of actual policy and getting things done. But the funny thing is about Calvin is that he managed to get things done. He was the boss without being bossy. In other words, he sat there in the Oval Office in the White House, and he didn't actually do much. But the economy thrived. Remember the Roaring 20s? And Calvin Coolidge managed to do things without having to oversee a war or be a war president. He didn't have to create a new bureaucracy here or there. He didn't create a Department of Homeland Security. He didn't, all of these things that we kind of measure great presidents by. Oh, he was the president during World War II, FDR. He was such a great president. He passed all these bills through Congress, the New Deal. He was such a great president, right? But to me, the greatest presidents are the ones that allow Americans to be free, make their own decisions, let the economy thrive. If you've got to step in to mediate a dispute here or there, that to me is true leadership. I mean, there's an old Chinese proverb. It was like the great leader, sits back and watches as people do their thing, and they realize, hey, we did it all by themselves. So that to me is what real, true conservative governance is about. But there just aren't very many kids' books about him. You'll find kids' books about Abraham Lincoln or George Washington. So my wife and I wrote this book called Calvin, the Coolest President. And if you go to Amazon.com, you can get it in paperback or Kindle. And it's just a great way to kind of introduce people, young people especially, to a conservative president who had just a very different approach to governing than most presidents. And the reason why I think he's forgotten is because most historians like presidents who do a lot of things. Calvin didn't do much, but he was a great president for different reasons, and the book sort of explains why with really beautiful illustrations. So I think people would really enjoy it if they take a look.
Well, kudos to both yourself and your wife for writing the book. And people think when I speak in public or whatnot, take Q&A, and, occasionally the question will come up, who's your favorite leader, favorite president? And I say Calvin Coolidge, and people think I'm kidding. And I say no. I mean they do because they expect the Reagan. They expect even in some circles like a John F. Kennedy. I say, look, Calvin Coolidge. The advantage that he had is that he did not believe that it was his responsibility to do something just because he thought he should do something. As a matter of fact, he felt quite the opposite. That it was only the role of the president of the United States to intervene when absolutely necessary, and he did not find it necessary. Coolidge gets some Great Depression stinky on him that I don't think he deserves, and you and I could probably talk about that too. But I loved Silent Cal. Loved what he did for this country. I have taken a shine to James K. Polk since I've been in Tennessee. I mean, seriously, until I got Austin to Tennessee, I didn't realize that Polk was a one-term president because he chose to be a one-term. He made a promise at the beginning of his first term that he wouldn't serve two, and he would have been reelected in a landslide, but he made good on the promise, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, Calvin did the same thing. I mean, he came in because Warren Harding passed away. And then he ran for office for a term, and he won. And then he could have run again, but he refused. So, I think that's another sign. I mean, that's very Washingtonian, if you will, right? We need leaders who are willing to step away from power, right? The people who are running towards power, who want to wield power, typically are the last people that you want to wield power. But if you like Calvin Coolidge, if you like the idea of a children's book about Calvin Coolidge, check out Calvin the Coolest President over on Amazon. And I'll tell you this, a sneak preview, this will surprise you. Our second book, children's book, next one's going to be about the second best president in American history, who was a Democrat, and it was Grover Cleveland, the last of the bourbon Democrats. And that's where the term mugwumps came from, because so many Republicans liked Grover Cleveland that they came over and they became mugwumps and voted for Grover Cleveland. So that'll be our next one.
Austin, I'm ordering the book right now, and it's for me because while I'm not a child, I read at a third grade level. So, I mean, there you go. Well, look.
I appreciate you very much, sir. Hope I can come back on sometime.
I appreciate it so much, Austin. Thanks for the time, and we'll do it again.
Yep, take care.
There's Austin Petersen joining us from Missouri, writing a great children's book about one of our unsung great presidents, Calvin Coolidge, old Silent Cal. I don't care if the story's true or not, right? I choose to believe the story about him at the state dinner, and I've told it 1,000 times. There's a question as to whether one of these stories – I'm going to tell you two quick stories. One, Calvin Coolidge was at a dedication ceremony. Calvin Coolidge did not like speaking in public, although he's president of the United States, and he's at a dedication ceremony. And, they're doing the traditional, they hand the shovel around. They've got all the golden-tipped shovels out there, and, everybody's doing a spade of dirt. And so Coolidge gets there, and he goes up with the other dignitaries, and they're there to dedicate this whatever building it is. And he goes to the little ceremonial plot of dirt, and he shovels a piece of the dirt, and he hands the shovel to another guy, and then he just steps back and just stands there. And one of the officials organizing the event steps up to him and says, Mr. President, we were hoping that you would say a few words. And Calvin Coolidge looks at him, looks at the people assembled, points to the dirt, and says, "There's some mighty fine earthworms in that hole." And that was it. Silent Cal, our finest president. 132 on Super Talk. All right, for you Super Talk TVers, Bell said I was looking a bit slouchy. So there you go. Huh? How about that? Oh, you'll have to go to Super Talk TV to find out. It's on the YouTubes and the Facebooks and the Twitter and the Twitches. Just go there and you'll see. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. No, I haven't cut off my chin whiskers, although I think that's coming, BK. I think that's coming. 615-737-9986 if you'd like to be a part of the show. There was a train derailment. What the hell's up with all of these train derailments? That's from the state of Florida. There is a suggestion that a CSA monument to Confederate dead be torn down from one of the most sacred areas in the United States of America. These tear down our history types will stop at nothing. Nothing will ever be good enough for them. To the point that they were tearing down Abraham Lincoln statues, for goodness sake. Well, we'll share with you what they're trying to tear down coming up in just a couple of minutes. Plus, speaking of coming up, Cameron Smith of the TennesseeInAnail.com will be along. Your calls and your super text, 615-737-9986. Before I get to Joe Biden, old sloppy Joe making a jerk of himself last night. I don't know what he's talking about. It just gets worse. His Nurse Pearl. Have you heard this clip? If you haven't, stand by. You'll hear it. Larry's next in Clarksville. Hey, Larry. Larry.
How you doing, brother?
Pretty good, Larry. I hope you are.
Well, I'm hanging in there.
Like a hair and a biscuit?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's that was one of Uncle Phil's favorite sayings.
Oh, was it now?
Yes, sir.
Well, maybe that's what the biggest honor that I've had since I've been here, Larry. I'm being serious. Since I've been in Nashville, I've got folks calling me Cousin Matt because of Uncle Phil. That's pretty cool. Anyway,
you're definitely Cousin Matt, and hell, I'd even call you Brother Matt.
Oh, well, that's kind of you. All right, so talk to me about crime, Larry. You've been around the block a time or two in Middle Tennessee. What's up?
Oh, just for a minute. I mean, me and Calvin Coolidge went to a grade school together. So, I was born in Nashville in 1960. And I've been all over. I've traveled all over. I served a lot of places. I want to know if George Soros funded Glenn Funk, because until Glenn Funk starts prosecuting true crimes in Nashville, it's not going to go away.
Well, I think what Funk is more concerned about than anything right now is his own future regarding incarceration. I mean, there are criminal proceedings regarding whether or not he illegally wiretapped areas of his offices that eventually broke federal law. And I hope that the feds are taking part in an investigation. We don't know if it was initiated by the attorney. You've heard this story, right, Larry?
Yes, sir. But who in the feds can you trust nowadays?
Well, that's a great
Matt,
point.
Matt, I had the opportunity to work with some of the finest, not for, but with and alongside of some of the finest FBI agents that ever have set foot on this planet. And they all left. I mean, one of them's a darn history teacher outside of Nashville now. The other one's working for Nissan. I mean, who the heck do we trust, Matt?
I'll say this in all seriousness, Larry, and well, obviously, I mean, it's in all seriousness, but I cannot find fault with any individual, and I talk to a lot of them, that have been in law enforcement that tell me they've gotten out of law enforcement and they utilize the expertise that they gained or gleaned in law enforcement to do something else, private security or whatever. And I have a hard time blaming them. At the same time, I wonder 5 years from now, where are our police officers? Where are they going to be? Where are the individuals that want to do good and be a part of an FBI that's a good and just organization, where are those people? Because I see them leaving in droves.
They absolutely are, sir. And I mean, I know people that are leaving the intelligence agencies in droves because of this crap coming out of Washington.
Well, I'm on record, Larry. I know you've heard me say it for those newbies in the audience. The FBI, sadly, while I have every respect in the world for the good field agents that are still out there, Washington, D.C. has corrupted the head of that snake to the point that it's poisoned the organization. It is an organization that needs to be shut down and built back from the ground up. Other organizations can tend to the matters that the FBI currently engages in. Certain departments can be shifted to other agencies. We need a consolidation like we've never seen. And if Donald Trump, and thank you, Larry, for the call, if Donald Trump achieves the nomination, and if Donald Trump overcomes the lying and the cheating that the Democrats are willing to engage in an effort to get Joe Biden, of all people, reelected as president of the United States, and if Donald Trump is president, or whomever it might be, but primarily Trump, because he started us down this road, we need to know that draining the swamp means cleaning up these organizations from the ground up and from the head down. It's way past time. We have bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. that think that they run the show. And sadly, a lot of them are right. Because who are they answerable to? Who is the FBI answerable to? Not a politicized Department of Justice. Anytime you get someone that actually wants answers in that office, we're told that they can't. Oh, no, you're politicizing the FBI. You can't do that. In the meantime, you get someone like Merrick Garland as the head of the Justice Department, as Attorney General. He runs roughshod over the FBI and demands that they do certain things. And yeah, I said do. Minute, too. And you're wondering, well, how can all of this happen, Matt? Don't we have a commander-in-chief that's supposed to be in charge? Yes, we do. It's this guy.
And Pearl Nelson, military. She'd come in and do things that I don't think you learn in medical school, nursing school. She'd whisper in my ear. I couldn't understand her. She'd whisper, she'd lean down. She'd actually breathe on me to make sure that there was a connection, a human connection. She even went home and brought back her pillow and Pearl.
What to say? All right, one, I'm sure that somewhere, someone's looking for Miss Pearl right now. Old Nurse Pearl. If Nurse Pearl is still around, she's got a lot of answers to questions that I have and that many of us have about her bedside manner. I don't know whether to be enamored with this woman or to be disgusted by her. I don't know. What are you doing, Nurse Pearl? What are you being accused of by the President of the United States? What is Joe Biden insinuating that Nurse Pearl did to him? She leaned down. She leaned. It's a whisper. Whisper things. Personal connections. Personal.
I can taste it.
I wonder if she let him, Biden likes to sniff the hair. I bet old Nurse Pearl had long hair. This was last night. This was last night. This was Joe Biden.
And Pearl Nelson, military. She'd come in and do things that I don't think.
He's talking about Walter Reed Medical Center, by the way.
And Pearl Nelson, military. She'd come in and do things that I don't think you learn in medical school, nursing school.
She'd come in and she would do things. I'm translating. I'm trying. For those of you who don't speak sloppy Joe, I'm trying to translate for you. It's difficult because while he is on stage, standing in front of an American flag, speaking at a podium that has the presidential seal, he sounds like a babbling, dementia-addled fool. Now, I'll relate this to you. just because it's you and I talking. I am not casting aspersions at our elderly. One of these days, God willing, I'll be elderly, and I'll be sitting in an assisted living facility or some home somewhere, babbling away, with a full heart and a mouth that won't stop, just blah, 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 all about Nurse Pearl. My mother spent the last 10 or so years of her life. She passed away at the age of 53 in 2003. And about the last 10 years, I guess it wasn't quite 10 because I left school in 95, so 8 years, in an assisted living facility. She had a malignant brain tumor. For those who don't know the backstory, she had a brain tumor, was given a 20% chance to live 2 to 5 years. She extended that by another 20 years. She lived 25 years after the surgery. But the amount of radiation and chemotherapy that she took a toll on her. And for the last 10 or 8 years of her life, it was a downhill slide. God love her. I mean, and I think of her every day. But I spent a good amount of time in the late 1990s into the early 2000s in an assisted living facility. And I didn't go as often as I should have. I was in my 20s, I admit that. But I went often enough to get to know her roommate, to get to know some of the other residents there. And I went often enough to know that if you were a familiar face, that many of them would want to see you as soon as you walk through the door. And when you walk through the door at the assisted living facility, you were likely to hear something like this.
Pearl Nelson, military. She'd come in and do things that I don't think you learn in medical school, nursing school. She'd whisper in my ear. I couldn't understand them. She'd whisper, she'd lean down. She'd actually breathe on me to make sure that there was a connection, a human connection. She even went home and brought back her pillow.
She even went home and brought back her pillows, says Joe. I guess because he didn't like the pillow that he was lying on. Speaking of lying, I don't believe this woman exists. Joe's going off script. Joe's brain can't manage. I'm not saying this because I take any pleasure in it. I'm analyzing the circumstances as I see them. An individual with early onset dementia, if you cannot manage to remember or figure out what you're supposed to be doing, oftentimes your mind wanders and you catch snatches of things that may or may not have happened to you in the past. Joe Biden is remembering a story that he's told that may or may not be true. Who knows? But it's a story that he's told over and over and over again in many, many different speeches. And it's just it's not even thinking, it's by rote. It's almost an involuntary reaction to standing in front of a podium and being on mic. .0930 says Nurse Pearl is her professional name. Maybe it was Hunter's gift to the big guy. Maybe so. You make that much money, you want to give presents. And then 0680 says, Matt, as much as I love Donald Trump, he will never be president of the United States again. The Republican Party will not allow him to be their candidate. So he'll jump ship, run as a third party. We'll end up with a Democrat president again. Write it on your calendar, writes Stanley. Stanley, I'm interested. While I may agree that the outcome of the primary might end up being Donald Trump in second place and another person on the ballot, well, Donald Trump was not contested as president of the United States in 2020. I don't know what I don't understand what you mean is the Republican Party will not allow him to be their candidate. So what are they going to do if we vote for him? I mean, I just saw recent polling. I don't get into polling this early on. I love you and I want to keep every one of you, but if you're coming here for polling on a Wednesday, March 1st, 2023, you're not going to get it because I don't believe in it. Polls are snapshots in time, And while some of it might be of mild interest to me, I'm not begrudging anyone who does this, but bisecting or dissecting polls at this stage, I think, is a exercise in laziness. I mean, it's just filling time. It means nothing. Well, if the election were held today, man, the election's not held today. How about that? The election's not till 2024. And I think polling is detrimental, or at least discussing it even is detrimental, in as much as it sets in stone in our minds who we are for and who we are against. And I don't think you should do that right now. I think you should let the process play out. I certainly am. I've not made any determination as to who my go-to person will be in the Republican primary in 2024. I see Nikki Haley joining in. I see this, what was his name? Ramaswamy. We're trying to get him on the show. I've empowered Bell to do so. It's like Yavik or Vivek. Vivek Ramaswamy is correct, I think. And then Nikki Haley's in, and Ron DeSantis is expected to be in. But Donald Trump's the front runner. He's the prohibitive favorite right now, man. Trump can't be 5201 follows up and says Trump is a threat to the establishment. I understand the Mitch McConnells of the world hate Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is the head of the Republican Party right now. Who else is in charge of the Republican Party right now other than Donald Trump? I mean, I know the biggest difference between Trump now and Trump then is Trump was a complete outsider then. He is the spiritual leader of the Republican Party. He's the heart and soul of the Republican Party right now. Isn't he? 53 after the hour on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Well, if you've not noticed, prices are going up on a lot of items, but I'm not seeing that at the Safe House. Mark and his team want to keep their prices as low as possible, and if you've ever noticed that some companies always have the paltry selection of safes on sale, I mean, I'm not trying to knock other people, but you go in and they've got like 4 safes, and nobody knows where the manuals are. Nobody knows what the combination is, but they're always on sale, boy. Well, wait a minute. So you're telling me during regular times you're overcharging for the safe so you can knock them on sale? You know, Mark doesn't do all of that. He doesn't play all of those games. He is simply the one and only locally owned safe specialty company in Nashville for 30 years. They're celebrating a birthday this coming May. I begged of Mark to let me broadcast from out there. I would love to do a show from right across City Cemetery at the Safe House. Anyway, they have the largest selection of safes in stock, and it's not even close. They're ready for delivery as well. And don't forget, gun safes are sales tax free. I'm going to get my hands on a gun safe from Mark and the Safe House because I'm adding to my collection, and it's time for a gun safe from the Safe House. I'll let you know how that goes as we proceed. Meantime, go to NashvilleSafehouse.com, NashvilleSafehouse.com, or go ahead and give them a drive-by today. 4th Avenue South in Nashville. It's the Safe House. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN, winding down last hour. We'll crank up this hour coming up in just a moment. It is 2:01. Hey, look it. Mac Morey's back in the newsroom, and he's got headlines. That's coming up right now. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Yes. That's what I said. I didn't say that. Well, I'll say that. That's true. Okay. Here's Mac Morey.
It's 2:01. I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Right now, 78 degrees and cloudy. We're expecting some severe weather coming on later in the mid-state. Right now, just a timeline looking over Waverly, Clarksville, that area. 6 to 9 p.m. is when you'll see this level 2 out of 5 for severe weather storm come in. 7 to 10 p.m., Nashville, Columbia, Waynesboro, up to Lafayette. And then 9 to 1, you got Tullahoma, Crossville, and Jamestown. That's looking like the timeline right now. We'll keep you updated with more weather news as it comes in. Weather forecast coming up just a couple of minutes away. Starting with Attorney General Merrick Garland. He was on Capitol Hill today. He told the Senate Judiciary Committee that more needs to be done to stop fentanyl from being sold to young people on social media. And Flaherty has more.
Garland grew emotional in his testimony, talking about the number of children and young adults dying of fentanyl overdoses.
The cartels that are creating these pills and that are distributing them within the United States are the most horrid individuals you can imagine.
He said the U.S. government needs a way to force social media companies to help law enforcement track down illegal transactions and to prevent algorithms from promoting the dangerous pills.
Some big sports news. A potential top NFL draft pick was named in an arrest warrant related to a fatal crash back in January. Authorities say Georgia star player Jalen Carter was street racing the night a former staffer and teammate died after crashing into telephone poles. Carter's currently at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, now accused of reckless driving and racing that led to that crash. Carter changed his story about that night from being about a mile behind the car that crashed to actually being alongside the other car. Carter released a statement on Twitter today saying, quote, "There's no question in my mind that when all of the facts are known, that I'll be fully exonerated of any criminal wrongdoing," end quote. Back here in Nashville with a crime story. Metro Police say they arrested a person who was out on bond last night.
Police say 26-year-old Jordan Sandifer sped away when officers tried to pull him over near the intersection of Herman Street and 17th Avenue North. Ground units pulled back. They let the helicopter track Sandifer to Albion Street, where he got out of his Dodge Charger. They say Sandifer ran away as detectives approached, but he didn't get far. They say he was ditching cocaine and a gun as he ran. He was booked on $147,000 bond on everything from felony evading, drugs, gun possession, and the commission of a dangerous felony, and reckless driving. His bond was $21,000 when he was arrested for almost the same charges in September. Ken Weaver, WTN News.
And that's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey friends, Matt Murphy here, and I want to tell you about a wonderful shop, actually two locations, that I have found in Franklin, Tennessee, and over on Charlotte Pike in L&L Market. It is Savory Spice. So most of us of a certain age, we've kind of upped our food game, right? We've gone away from the drive-through fast food or even the bland pre-boxed stuff, and we go to the market and we find ourselves that nice cut of meat, maybe that nice piece of salmon, that nice piece of chicken, that nice filet. But then you go home and you take those same old nasty spices. I mean, I said it, nasty spices, and you throw it in on that delicious food. Why in the world wouldn't you want to up your spice game as well as your food game by going to Savory Spice? I have done so. My wife has done so. We had some incredible pot roast. Thank you, Savory Spice, because they've got all of that pre-mixed, like all of the fixins. All we needed was a piece of meat, some broth, and carrots and onions. That's it. The rest of it went in with the Savory Spice package, and it was absolutely delicious. It's called Sunday Pot Roast. Ask about it when you go into Savory Spice. Up that spice game with Savory Spice. Whether it's the weekend or your everyday spices, they've got that. They've got an incredible selection of different salts, flavored varieties as well. Ask about the popcorn when you stop by. They're right off the square in Franklin, right beside Gray's Pharmacy, or L&L Market on Charlotte Pike in Nashville. And when you stop by, do me a favor. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to Savory Spice. It is 2:08 and a good afternoon. I want to tell you a little about the last 40 seconds of my life because I enjoy sharing. So most of you know by now, if you're regular listeners, if you're newbies to the listening audience, thank you for being a part of our day. Give us a minute and we'll grow on you like a virus. I've got about 52 more minutes to go. I'm going to share that time with Cameron Smith, more on him in a moment. So we hand off to The Drive with Brian Wilson. It's live and local. It's information-fueled and opinion-driven on Supertalk 99.7 WTN. We're also up on Supertalk TV now. That's been going on for the month of February. We're just a month old, so we're just barely – I don't even think we can sit up yet. We're kind of looking around in our crib in terms of our infancy on the TV side of things. And we're all radio people, so none of us like it. But it's up on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch for your amusement. And so the last 40 minutes of my life was this, because I have a one-shot. We call it a one-shot in the biz, and that has to go to a two-shot when we have a guest. And we have a guest, Cameron Smith. Hey, Cameron.
Hello, Matt.
How are you?
I'm well. And speak for yourself on the not liking the camera thing.
Uh-huh.
I mean, hello, camera people.
Oh, gosh. Oh, don't make it. Don't Joe Biden this. So more on you in a moment.
Sure.
So you have to go from the one shot to the two shot, which is awesome. I think it's great. You know, I love it. And I'm listening to this. And by the way, I'm not faulting my man BK, but there's up, a little more, to the right, to your left, yeah, a little more, left, up, perfect, no, too much.
Half Murph face is just not great, though.
I guess so.
That's right, I stepped up. She's my friend and she needed help. If I had to, I'd pee on any one of you.
All right.
I do not know what that means, but it's true.
It's awesome.
If you absolutely needed me to, I would do so. I'm going to play you this without comment.
Okay.
And I would like for you to react to it. Here's your president of the United States.
And Pearl Nelson, military. She'd come in and do things that I don't think you learn in medical school, nursing school. She'd whisper in my ear. I couldn't understand her. She'd whisper, she'd lean down. She'd actually breathe on me to make sure that there was a connection, a human connection. She even went home and brought back her pillow.
Cameron, have you been around nurses?
I have, in fact.
Ever have one of them breathe on you?
Why are you laughing?
I don't know.
It's not.
That's not serious. It's serious.
That's not standard. They don't come up and just breathe on you for human connection?
I did not say that. I did not say that.
So this is basically probably categorized as one of these trains that's derailing.
Right.
It's just verbal instead of the things that
it's the same thing.
Yeah, basically.
So I'm not besmirching the elderly or people who get. I mean, we all have it coming, God willing. I mean, right? I mean, my grandpa used to say, "Getting old's hell, but it beats Plan B."
Right, beats the alternative.
Right. So this one reminded me, and some of the ones he's done in the past have reminded me of this too. When I would go visit my mother in her assisted living facility, it was a nursing home, Warrenton Nursing Home, in Warrenton, Georgia, where she spent the last 8 years of her life. It was a great facility, and I went enough where they got to know me. I mean, not just the nurses and the folks at the front desk and all of that, but the people who lived there. And, they don't have a lot of exterior interaction as much as they should. And so when they see the young buck coming through the front doors, they gravitate. I got a lot of this type of stuff where they're not really sure where they left off. They're not really sure where they're going. They're not really sure what they're talking about, but they just want to talk to you.
If I ever get into politics, in elected politics, I'm going to have a staffer that just has an air horn. And whenever things start going off the track, they're just going to blow it really loud. And I'll be like, what was that? And then we can reset. Because I wish I could say this is just age, but I've watched countless politicians that they say something, they're like, this sounds like I'm sniffing people. I should say something else, and they kind of just keep going, right? And it's the snowball effect, and they need somebody to break it and be like, "Brr," and stop, because it just gets weirder and weirder, and sometimes you need to eject. And this is a situation where, I mean, people that are nurses around Joe Biden are going to be like, does he expect me to breathe on him?
But it's become, I mean, it's almost, am I saying the right thing here? It's almost like Stockholm Syndrome where the media, we don't expect the media to cover this. They cover up for him to the point where I don't know exactly what you say about it, but as a one-off, it's one thing, but collectively, it's very dangerous that this person is president of the United States.
What if I told you it was a bad idea to keep electing really old politicians? Because
I would suggest that you too, buddy boy, are past your prime.
Yeah, probably.
And,
I have no intentions of reproducing further. But my point is, I think we have this conversation, then we're supposed to be like, oh, age is just a number. No, it's not.
Age is not just a number.
It's not just a number. And it's also a context, right? I'm interested in people who represent me, who are kind of where I am in life, right? And I understand that, like, seniors may feel, well, I want somebody that represents me and where I am in life. Okay, fine. But I think this idea that, well, age has no implications on something that requires cognitive capacity, like governing, that's ridiculous. And I understand everybody has different baselines, and Joe Biden's is not somebody else's, but we keep saying, well, given options of electing folks who are younger or people who are old, well, let's go with the old. And I just say no. Like, stop it. Like, I will not, and I've told people this, and you can call me ageist, but I'm not going to vote for somebody who's beyond the American life expectancy. That if you're beyond the life expectancy, this is not the sweet spot for dealing with issues and having the intellectual plasticity to say the internet's not a series of tubes, right?
So in that dynamic, Donald Trump's off the table.
Yep.
It feels like Donald Trump's a lot younger than just the 4 years in age difference. I mean that.
Well, that goes to the
matters.
point where you can't say that an age is absolute, because Donald Trump and Joe Biden have a different cognitive baseline. However, put this Donald Trump against a much younger Donald Trump, and I can tell you
would see the difference.
Who has more cognitive capacities. And when it comes to Donald Trump, I just take him at his own word.
In Trump's case, that might be good.
Maybe. But Trump is saying...
He's not as swift coming up with the,
When Trump was saying, hello, this Joe Biden is too old, and now he's going to run at the same age Biden was when he ran this. No, if you tell me that's too old to run, then it's too old to run. And I think we should stick with that. Be consistent.
I do think it's a case-by-case thing, but I do believe, I agree with the Nikki Haley analysis. I agree with, who was it? Was it Hawley that took her up? One of the folks in the Senate or the House that had an age restriction bill that they were going to put up, where you have to take some sort of cognitive test after a certain age. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, this is the political issue of like requiring seniors after 65, if you want to keep your driver's license, to do another driving test, like that kind of thing. Like, I understand that it offends some folks, but it's also the case that like your cognitive capacities change. That's science.
It's not about you.
Right.
You could make, to use a different type of argument, I started driving my mother around because my mother had brain cancer.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather taught me to drive when I was 12. By the time I was 14 years old, I was regularly, I'm talking every time I got in the car with my mother, I was driving the car at 14 to the store, to my grandparents' house, everywhere. It's the reason my grandfather taught me to drive. So I had the, call it what you will, maturity or whatever, to drive at that age. Does that mean that I should have been allowed to get a license? No, we set an age standard, and it doesn't apply to everyone. You can do it on the other end, too, where you can set that 70-year-old age barrier that might offend people, but we're not talking exclusively to you. This is not personal. We're just thinking about the overall health and safety of the community at large.
And we make these judgment calls all the time. The reason people cry ageist when somebody's old is because the elderly vote. The nobody cries ageist when it's like you have to be 18 to buy tobacco or 21 to buy liquor or whatever it is now. Everybody's like, oh, that's fine. Why? Because that's
Don't you love being old enough, by the way, to say whatever it is?
It's a powerful political constituency on one end and not on the other, and so nobody wants to offend. But my point is, we make these judgment calls all the time, and so those type of baselines. Now, I am curious what this cognitive test includes and what it would require folks to take. But I've been a staffer in the United States Senate, and I've seen a lack of cognitive capacity in a number of folks.
The Senate's the worst. I mean, and you could go down the list. I mean, right now you've got Dianne Feinstein that is coming out of California, and it's sad, but everyone knows that she doesn't have the cognitive ability to even be in committee hearings anymore.
Yeah, well, I'll use somebody who's dead, Robert Byrd out of West Virginia.
Or Strom Thurmond.
Yes, and both of them. At the end of their careers, nobody was home. Right?
Talking machine.
Right. I mean, Robert Byrd, one of my favorite speeches of all time was it was July 4th and Memorial Day, where he just started talking about things on the table at a picnic and just listed them for a while. And I'm like, whoa, bud. And
someone go and get the little mic that they hang on their lapel off his lapel and get him
and I saw that firsthand, and I'm like, this is not fair. It's not right. It's not good representation to the people who put him in office because they don't see him day to day, and you're basically holding up a fraud.
Candace Owens appeared on Tucker Carlson's show, and Candace is local to the Nashville area, although she won't come on our show, according to Bell K. I don't know why. I'd love to have her on. Anyway.
Because you're mean.
Probably. She said that she asserts that she obviously doesn't blame Joe, and they used John Fetterman as an example, obviously not cognitively declined because of age, but because of a medical issue.
Sure.
That Giselle Fetterman and Jill Biden are guilty of spousal abuse because they allow their spouses, who they know are mentally incapable of continuing in any sort of reasonable job performance, they trot them out there and they prop them up. And I don't know that I'd go that far. Would you go that far?
No. I mean, spousal abuse, my wife and I have helped some folks that dealt with actual spousal abuse, so I don't fool around about that. Like, spousal abuse, particularly in the legal sense, we don't make jokes about it. We don't stretch it to cover this type of stuff. So for Candace or anybody to say that, it's just a disservice to folks that actually have to deal with real abuse. This type of scenario is basically somebody that is aged, is by their own baseline kind of declined, and to go so far as say it's dangerous or not, I don't know. But is this really the best foot forward? I don't think so. I don't think anybody's arguing that.
Frankly, and I'm not trying to besmirch his medical issues in any way, but he's the one that decided to continue running, or at least his people did. I'm talking about Fetterman. That dynamic is turning out to be a positive for the Republicans in the United States Senate because he is not there to vote.
Right.
And as long as his people insist that he will at some point get the help he needs and get back to vote, that's a Democrat vote that they need that they don't have, especially when you have the Joe Manchins of the world curling over and voting with Republicans on certain issues.
Yeah, and again, one, Republicans should have had a better candidate there, not lost the race in the first place. But this is a little bit different in that people knew he had a stroke and had some medical issues, right? Did they know the scope of it? Maybe not, but voters in Pennsylvania, if they were saying, oh, this guy's in great health, they were missing something because Republicans were pretty aggressive about it. And now they're saying, well, this is our bed. We've made it. We got to sleep in it.
All right, we'll ask Cameron Smith of the TennesseeIntheNail.com in just a moment if there is more to be said on the Congressman Andy Ogle story, or is that story done? I mean, the resume embellishment. That's up next, 2:22 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So I have a website and I have a telephone number, and I want you to use one or both if you so desire. Maybe you go to the website, TennesseeMen'sClinic.com, to find out more information about what I'm telling you regarding your testosterone levels. Then you use the telephone number to make the call, to schedule the appointment, to get in and get your T checked. What does it hurt you? I understand that you don't like going to the doctor. Gentlemen, I understand that you don't want to face up to the reality that you're getting older, but don't simply say, well, I've lost that energy because I'm 45, Murph. That's what happens. No, sir. It does not have to happen that way. You can get that energy back again with appropriate testosterone levels. If your T has dropped, it can be causing that lack of energy. And yes, it can cause lack of activity in the bedroom. Now, if that's going on, you want to do something about that to please the loved one in your life. Even if it's not, that could be coming next if you don't get that T checked. Go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com to find out more. Here's that number as promised, 615-208-9090, 208-9090 for our friends at Tennessee Men's Clinic.
An update in Ohio and the toxic train derailment and an unidentified arsonist. Police are looking for him after a apartment went up in flames about 3 months ago. That and more 30 minutes after the hour right here. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We're back after it. It's 2:26. I'll get to your calls and your thoughts on the Super Text line as well. You're welcome. 615-737-9986. 615-737-9986. I'm a little bit surprised that this has not popped up yet in national media circles. What is this, you might add? Or ask. I'll tell you in a moment after I remind you that Cameron's with us. I just said that, I think. I'm all over the map today, I'll tell you.
Wild.
I know. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Hello,
I got up
Cameron.
early, I think.
Hello, Cameron.
Hey,
Mac.
Hey, Mac.
Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, I barely saw you back there because I don't have my cameras on and Bell's in the way.
Gotcha.
Bell's taken to, he does this BK lean now, where I don't know what he's doing over there, but he's
Ever
leaning
since
in
he
front
was
of us.
cougar bait, Bell's just blocked him from vision.
Yeah. Speaking
He's tired of
speaking of cougar chow, I had someone
Never
bring
mind.
that.
Goodbye.
It's been nice.
I had someone bring that up today on the old super text line. I don't know if you saw it. I wanted to make sure that you saw it.
I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe purposefully. What'd they say?
I'm looking for it right now. That
Did it involve the word sacrilegious as applied to Mac Morey?
Maybe. It had something to do that Mac's just there for the Cougars or something.
The Cougs, man.
The Cougs. You know, and I know your lovely significant other Hannah loves that.
Oh, it's her favorite thing. Yeah,
sure.
She's so excited about it.
Then there's this. This was my favorite thing to hear last night. So, the Tennessee House of Representatives, for whatever reason, in the General Assembly, they are debating bringing back the firing squad as an option for execution purposes. I'm neither here nor there. I don't care.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. I think maybe the genesis of this, and I would have to speak to the sponsor, and I don't even know who sponsors the legislation right now, but I would suggest that maybe it's because it's becoming increasingly difficult to get the cocktail of drugs used to humanely put someone to sleep, which is basically what we're doing.
Yep.
Much like we do with our pets.
Right.
We're putting a human being to sleep. So because that's become more and more difficult, we're kind of drawing a line in the sand saying, no, anti-death penalty advocates, you're not going to loophole us out of the death penalty business. We're going to still be in business. We'll, in Alabama, we would say, crank up Yellow Mama. I don't know what Tennessee used prior to lethal injection. But they're talking about bringing back the firing squad. So in the midst of that debate, and that's one thing, that's fine.
Sure.
It's a legit debate. I don't think it's necessary. We have Representative Paul Sherrill of Sparta, Tennessee. Paul had this to say.
And I was just wondering about, could I put an amendment on that? It would include hanging by a tree also. And also, I would like to sign on to your bill, sir. Thank you.
Representative Paul Sherrill, Republican, Sparta.
I just don't understand why we're having a conversation about, and I get the technical issue of, okay, this is becoming harder. We need a different option to continue the policy. But this should not be a big thing that takes a lot of time. And we certainly shouldn't be getting creative, right? And that type of stuff to me is just like, really? You got so much time?
I do not understand why some political figures insist on the unforced errors.
Because we made it into a game.
You think he knows what he was saying?
I don't know
Paul Sherrill. I don't know
I
who
don't
he is.
either. And so I don't want to imply something that isn't there, but it's just dumb, man. Like the idea that we need to have that, why don't we have it by axe throwing? Like, let's not get too creative here with ways to make sure people die.
Well, and let's certainly not.
I was just wondering about, could I put an amendment on that? It would include hanging by a tree also.
Let's certainly not directly bring up lynching as a viable option,
right,
you're handing ammunition, no pun intended, to opponents of the death penalty.
Well,
and you're inserting a racial component in this conversation that needs not be there.
Yeah, I'd wear them out. I would say, wow, you're looking for an excuse to bring back lynchings. Like, if I'm a Democrat, I'm saying this is what you get with today's Republican Party. And then they got a soundbite to play. And then you have to explain why you're not carrying a racial note.
And for those of you already on the super text line applauding Paul Sherrill, you're hurting your own argument. If you believe in the death penalty, you're taking us further away from the death penalty by some jackass in the Tennessee General Assembly bringing up lynching. Yeah. Okay? And let's do it in the public. You're not being realistic. 223 or 232, I should say. I transposed that on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
32 minutes after the hour of 2 o'clock. Mac Maury with all your top stories. Right now, 78 degrees and cloudy. It's going to get rainy and maybe a little thundery here. Storms expected tonight in the mid-state. Going to be around Waverly and Clarksville, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. It'll travel then over to Music City, Lafayette, Columbia, and Waynesboro around 7 to 10 p.m. And you look at a flood watch south of Murfreesboro, around Centerville, Lawrenceburg, southwest Tennessee in a flood watch. And then for the rest of the mid-state, again, just look at these level 2 out of 5 severe thunderstorms. Weather coming up in just a few minutes. The CEO of Norfolk Southern Railroad has agreed to testify before Congress next week on the toxic disaster in East Palestine, Ohio. Alan Shaw will appear March 9th before the Senate's Environment and Public Works Committee. Ann Flaherty has more from Washington.
A spokesperson for the Norfolk Southern CEO says Shaw is appearing voluntarily and promises to share what he knows about the February train derailment. Shaw will face angry lawmakers, particularly Democrats, who say the railroad industry hasn't done enough to stop these kinds of disasters from happening. Several lawmakers, including Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, are rallying behind a bipartisan bill that calls for stricter rules for trains carrying hazardous material.
And right now here in the Volunteer State News 2 reports that the Nashville Fire Department is asking for community help to find an unidentified arsonist. This comes after the Hickory Lakes apartment was engulfed in flames about 3 months ago. Looking through the surviving camera footage, officials noticed a person walking through the parking lot towards the office before the fire, then setting the fire, and then leaving the apartment complex. A cash reward of $5,000 is being offered if anyone has any information that could lead to an arrest. And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
The Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief located in Franklin. My back has felt better over the last year than it has in 10. Thank you, Dr. Gill. Thank you, Dr. Wendy. Thank you, Dr. Dominic, and thank you, Dr. V. Thank you to the rest of the staff of the Dr. Gill Center. I cannot say it enough. They helped alleviate so much of my pain with traditional chiropractic care so top-notch, plus advanced modern techniques like decompression therapy that Dr. Gill brought to Middle Tennessee some 30 years ago. Plus, they have other advancements that they want you to get to know. Find out more by making the call that so many others have made to the Dr. Gill Center. And right now, early on in 2023, there's the $23 special you need to know about. $23 will get you your first appointment, a complete examination, x-rays, and they'll sit down with you and review the findings and develop an action plan that's going to help alleviate your pain without the need for pills and without the need for surgery. We always say, don't take a pill. Call Dr. Gill and the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. The number, 882-4838. 882-4838 for the Dr. Gill Center. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. By the way, I'm an advocate of the death penalty in as much as I believe that the death penalty could be made effective, and we could do a lot better on making it speedier in terms of the process. There are some ways that we could do that. Don't mistake my frustration with Representative Paul Sherrill with being against the death penalty. I think you believe that for certain crimes that are so heinous and against society that there's only one appropriate punishment. That would be death. Is that fair? Yeah. Oh, stand by.
I forgot to press the button. Yes. I actually have long advocated for a higher standard for capital punishment, that the standard of proof shouldn't just be beyond a reasonable doubt. It should be, call it with absolute certainty, something where we don't have these situations where, we're 90% sure, 80% sure. If we're going to use the power of the state to take someone's life, I want to be certain that they are guilty of the crime for which they're accused. And so that's sort of my caveat in it, because the idea that we would take someone's life in error, there is no, subsequent exoneration. You're gone. And so for me, I think there needs to be a higher standard than what we presently have.
Yeah, I mean, I've always... the DNA standard is mine, right? If you have good DNA evidence and it is demonstrable beyond any doubt that it's the individual in question, then that's fair enough for me.
Yeah, well, I look at it that, okay, beyond a reasonable doubt may be the sort of guilt or innocence phase, but when we move to sentencing, it's clear and convincing. Okay, I got you on video executing these people, right?
Yeah, sure.
That kind of thing, rather than just a very strong circumstantial case.
All right, I'm going to relate some of the comments I'm getting off of the super text line, but I want to replay this just to make sure that everyone heard it correctly, because I'm getting a couple of these. What are you two talking about? This from 5932. What are you two talking about? You're the ones relating lynching to a specific race. Hanging someone wasn't specific to race back in the day. It was a method of causing death and nothing more. You're specifically relating hanging to the KKK. Shame on you. Okay, first and foremost, call super texter. Did you ever mention the KKK? I've not once mentioned the KKK.
No, it's almost like there's an association there, Matt.
Oh, between lynching and the KKK? Because we talked about lynching.
Right.
Lynching is a mob rule death sentence carried out by hanging someone from a tree, traditionally. By the way, when death by hanging was utilized by government, instituted by men, it was rarely, if ever, done on a tree.
They had these things called gallows.
They had gallows, right, that were structures specifically designed to hang someone by the neck until dead. That is not what Representative look, I'm not knocking the guy. I don't know the guy. Maybe he misspoke, whatever. Maybe he's trying to be funny. I have no idea. I just think it's taking us away. It's one step away from the death penalty when things like this are said.
I was just wondering about, could I put an amendment on that? It would include hanging by a tree also. And also, I would like to sign on to your bill, sir. Thank you.
So I think it's fair to say hanging by a tree is defined as lynching.
Yes. Well,
and by the way, I don't remember anyone bringing up race except to say that opponent. I want you to hear clearly, 5932. What we said was what I said, that opponents of the death penalty will use this to infuse race into the conversation for their own political purposes. I hope you understand that. I'm not infusing race in the conversation, but I guarantee you they will because of this guy's dumb comment.
Yeah, and the by the tree thing is
the problem.
Is where I'm like, whoa, okay, let's try this on a different setting. Imagine the state enacts this law and adopts the proposed amendment, and the cocktail for lethal injection is not available, and so the state of Tennessee goes and finds a tree and hangs someone. Really? You think that's a good idea and a good look, and that's completely neutral and wouldn't be charged the image of anyone, particularly a black convict, hanging from a tree in Tennessee because Republicans decided, hey, we'd be cute with an amendment.
And no one, and 5932 is trying to defend himself by saying that no one's saying that white people weren't lynched too. You're assuming we're saying things that we aren't saying.
You're helping Democrats, like you're basically giving them a political hammer and saying, beat us in the face because we're trying to be cute with amendments. That's what happened. It's not appropriate and it's not okay.
Yeah, I just
it's a bad idea. It's dumb.
If you think it's a great idea to bring back lynching, I don't think you're going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. I don't think you're going to come anywhere close. Carl is next up in Springfield. Hey, Carl, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Well, since they're having trouble getting the appropriate drugs for taking care of this situation, why don't they just use the confiscated fentanyl that they're getting? That'll work.
Well, I mean, you know, what I don't understand about the fentanyl, and yeah, I mean, look, I understand that we
would work,
have,
wouldn't it?
Well, fentanyl kills you. A bullet would work. I don't have a problem with firing squad. I really don't.
Fentanyl is apparently killing everyone, and we talked off air about this, that it's like, wait a minute, you've now confiscated enough fentanyl to kill the whole planet. Like, who is out there being like, you know, I'd like me a little fentanyl? Like, everybody's hearing, this stuff will kill you. This stuff will kill you. It literally will kill you, and yet we're getting it by the boatload. It just seems something's not matching up for me.
All right, and so I don't know, Carl, if you're being serious or joking around. I mean, you're right. I mean, every day we hear about, like Cameron's talking about, these busts where, hey, we got enough fentanyl to kill 80 million people. We got enough fentanyl.
Right.
And it's like, I don't understand basic economics when it comes to fentanyl. You have to have a demand in order to need that level of supply. And if that level of supply is enough to kill everyone on the planet 3 times over, I think we're overstocked. I think
right.
I don't think we need any more production.
It's also not a great marketing ad for fentanyl, right? Like if you kill all your customers and the whole planet, who? These are like bad drug pushers, and yet this is what we're seeing. This is the thing. So I want to know what's going on and why do we have so much of this stuff?
Well, I understand what 5932. I love you. I'm not hating on you. I think you're a little misguided if you don't think that the consequences of language like this are going to take us further away from the death penalty rather than continuing the death penalty.
It's a political distraction.
Right. That's what it is. But I understand the overall frustration that people believe that we have sanitized things for the criminals to the point that we're losing sight of the victims. And I get that. I understand that you get frustrated that we bend over backwards to make sure that, these insanely violent criminals are mollycoddled or whatever. That's the perception when they go to prison. That's the perception when they're on death row. And I understand that, and I'm not dismissing that. I'm simply saying if you have lawmakers in the state of Tennessee talking about bringing back hanging from a tree, that's going to take us further away from law and order and justice, appropriate justice for heinous crimes where the only appropriate punishment is death.
Yeah, and we should be very careful on these type of issues because look at it a different way. As a conservative, when the government is empowered, that's something I'm skeptical of. When the government can take away your freedom, that's ultimate big government. When it can take away your life, that's something I want to make. I want to make the government jump through a lot of hurdles and check a lot of boxes because I know how government works. And as a conservative, I'm deeply skeptical. So I know sometimes it may be frustrating to watch these folks be able to appeal and it take years.
Yes.
But I do not like the idea that the government could quickly and efficiently kill somebody. That's not a thing for me.
Well, it always fascinates me when we have these conversations when folks want us to be like the criminals.
Right. That's bad.
Y'all know what I'm talking about? Like, criminals are bad. We've established that. Lawbreakers are bad. Someone that's willing to take the life of another person, that's awful. Well, if they rape and kill a woman, we ought to kill them the same way. Should we? So you want to be like the criminal.
Yeah. That's what I hear a lot.
That's not justice, that's vengeance. That's vengeance. And I understand that these things get emotional, but I don't want my government in the business of vengeance.
Absolutely not.
Let's see. David is next over in Hendersonville. Hey, David, hope you're well.
Hey, Matt, how you doing? And I am.
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, I agree with the hanging, and I'm pretty sure I never heard that guy say a thing about lynching. Now, hear me out before you cut me off here. You got people out there that do, and when I say that, I mean it has to be 100% the person done it.
Sure.
I don't agree with all this keeping them in prison after they've been convicted and taking care of them for 20, 30 years when they've had the death penalty given to them. I don't think that's right. I think that's not justice to me. All that does is, to me, is keep the people that was hurt from that. It just carries it out. The hanging, maybe in certain situations, if you do something to a child, murder a child, rape a child, I'm sorry. Take them to the gallows and hang them.
But would you support hanging from a tree? Like the state saying, let's go find a tree.
No. I never. No, don't put words in my mouth. Never said anything about a tree.
He did.
I said gallows. I never heard him say anything about a tree.
You want me to play it again?
No, you're right. No, you're right. He did say tree. Right. I don't agree with the tree. They made gallows years ago, and they hung people from them.
Look,
I'm okay with the tree. No.
Yeah. Well, David, thank you. Look, and I didn't cut you off, and I appreciate your perspective, but here's the thing: you and I are more simpatico than you believe. Because if he had said, I believe we need to bring back the gallows and hang people from the gallows, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation because it would never come up.
Right.
I mean,
I get that.
It just wouldn't. I mean, I don't have a problem with suggestions for alternative forms of executing. I mean, the end result is the same, Our duty is to not engage in cruel and unusual punishment per the Constitution of the United States. That's about it. By the way, congrats to the Beasts.
Thank you.
I'm completely shifting the topic. The Beasts are not accused of any heinous crime that might lead to the death penalty, but you told me I wanted to end on a better note.
Yeah.
And this was a downer, but I wanted to turn it into something different in the last 30 seconds.
No, that's a sharp turn. I had the privilege of baptizing two more of my sons at church on Sunday, and
That's
it was really cool. I mean, they're great dudes. I'm very proud of them, and to just be there and say, "Hey, we've decided to follow Jesus," and that's something as a dad I pray for, and I'm encouraged by it. So for them to tell everybody, like, "Yeah, I'm following Jesus, and I want you to know about it." Big deal. It was in a black horse trough. All three of my boys have now been baptized in black horse troughs. So we don't take to the fancy baptismal fonts real well with the heater and the Jesus jacuzzi, really. We don't do it that way. But it was great. It was awesome.
The Jesus jacuzzi.
If your listeners know exactly what I'm talking about.
Cameron, good on you, buddy. I appreciate you. There's Cameron Smith. We'll be back in a moment, wrap things up. Actually, I bet we're wrapping things up right now. It is 2:53 on Super Talk 99.7 WT and The Drive next.